It's your man Beretta.
Yo, what's the good word? I'd like to welcome you to this latest episode of The Mind of Beretta. You know me, it's your man, the aforementioned Beretta. As always, you can reach out to me on Instagram and on Twitter at Beretta Beats, Berretta Beats. And once again, if you know me by my government name, you can also reach out to me on Facebook. You can also check out my Facebook page, The Mind of Beretta. Just go to facebook.com/TMOB podcast. And so it begins with a date that has been stuck in my mind for about the last 20 or so years. That date, in fact, would be November 18th, 1997. That date, unbeknownst to me, of course, would begin a series of events that, for the most part, shaped the rest of my life up to this point. And with the hindsight of 2020, I'd like to enter this as Exhibit A in a moment of clarity. September 18th, 1997 was the day that my father, salute Sammy Davis Sr., that was the day he decided he was just going to lay down, take a nap, because he basically got tired. His body got tired. His mind got tired. His heart got tired. And I have to be perfectly honest with you. That day, you might as well have considered me dead too. Because when you lose a parent, when you lose a parent, it's one of the most devastating things that can happen to you. It just leaves you with this deep, unimaginable sadness, this deep, unreconcilable, I guess that's a word, feeling inside of you that you have lost literally a part of who you are, or who you grow up to be, or who you started out life as. Because in essence, since we all know about basic biology, it takes a man, takes a woman, or at least in this case, it takes an egg and a sperm to create you. The good folks that are listening to The Mind of Beretta. Well, half of that left me on November 18th, 1997. And what became of me from that moment on was a person that was completely and thoroughly disabused of every notion that I had ever learned up to that point. Basically, everything I've learned from growing up, elementary, middle school, high school, even the years that I went to college, up until that date, November 18th, 1997, meant not a goddamn thing to me. And for those that grew up with their fathers actively in their lives, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I say this. That day, I realized, and nobody on this earth is indestructible. No one on this earth is a Superman. Because in my case, I always considered my father the strongest human being on the face of this earth, the toughest individual on the face of this earth. I mean, this is a guy that I routinely saw as a child work from sun up to virtually sundown, 5, 6, even sometimes 7 days out the week, to make sure that he took care of myself and my 4 sisters. And that day, because I thought that my dad was indestructible, I thought nothing could harm him. Nothing could even stand in his way. Well, of course, maybe the occasional Jim Beam bottle, but that's a whole different story. But that day, I realized we're all gonna die. And for someone that had just got into his early 20s, still thinking that he had, a good 70, 80 years left past that point to figure out what the hell I was going to do with the rest of my life, that brought that to a screeching halt. And again, this was basically my first moment of clarity, because as we like to say, shit gets real. Time for you to stop playing the little kid. Time to stop thinking that your daddy's gonna come and help you if you get into some kind of trouble, because dad's not here anymore. And that was also the day that I realized, yeah, I need to do something with my life. So I guess with the theme of this particular episode, and so with that, I figure, since the basic premise of this particular episode is a moment of clarity, I just wanted to throw out a couple of things that have been on my mind for a while, just never really knew the best way to put it into words. In some cases, I really haven't had anyone to talk to about this. So I figure I'd put a little bit of trust inside of all of you all that's listening to not judge me, just keep an open mind about it, because I'm certainly going to keep an open mind about it. Well, at least as open as I can be, considering that I do have a pretty strong opinion on some of these. But at any rate, since it's pretty fresh in the news, I know that there have been people talking about that officer-involved shooting up in Minnesota that involved that young lady and an Ethiopian police officer. Which now really begs the question, where the hell's Blue Lives Matter now? Because it's quite obvious you have black police officer. Let's just go on ahead and call it what it really is, because unless you're white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, you're considered black, even though they have other names for other races and things like that. If you're non-white, you're basically black, especially if you look like us. I digress. So here you have the situation where I don't need to go into all the details because, again, you've probably kept up with the news lately. But this case right here basically echoes a sentiment that I've had for a long time. And that sentiment is, nothing in this country is a tragedy unless it involves a white woman. Now, if you think I'm joking about that, just go back through your brain, go back through news clippings, do your Googles, whichever you choose to, and think of any time that you've seen the news or read an article about how a white woman of any age and something happened to them leading to their untimely death, and the very first or second word you will see in that headline or the top of that news story involves the word tragedy. Now, this is where I got to stop for a second, because let other people tell it, for all our lives, any life lost is a tragedy. Especially if at the time of their death and their passing, they were under the age of, let's say 80. Let's go with the 80. Well, I'm sorry. What is that? I think it's 70. But either way, the point still remains. If you haven't lived to a nice, ripe old age, then it's considered a tragedy. Now, unless you're white, because the way that they treat people dying at 96 is a tragedy, and it's so sad, and it's such a depressing time. Like, really, did you expect them to live to be 192? I mean, inside of the Bible that you profess to use as your source for daily inspiration, and believe you me, I can go into another tangent on that, but I'm going to stay right here and say, you should know that one day we're all going to leave this earth, and we're going to have to meet our Creator. Except, like I said, a lot of white people feel like they're not supposed to die. But at any rate, that was one long tangent. So let's get back to this police officer in Minnesota and this young white lady. You call this a tragedy, but yet I could literally go down the list of all the black males that were murdered. And yes, I'm going to use the word murdered at the hands of law enforcement for, in some cases, no reason whatsoever. Selling loose cigarettes, selling CDs, walking down the street, going back to your parents' house, driving while black, riding a dirt bike while black. Hell, come to hear a couple days ago, you ride a four-wheeler while you're black, you're liable to get shot too. And to white people, y'all don't consider that a tragedy, now do you? But yet you want the world at large to consider what happened to this poor lady up in Minnesota. And now let me make this very clear. I really, really, in my heart of hearts, as cold as it can be, I feel sad for what happened to that young lady. And my condolences truly do go out to her family. But I just really have to ask the question. Since when was a tragic situation and what counts as a tragedy, when was that only the exclusive domain for the dominant culture? Translation, white people. Well, evidently, we're figuring this out now, because that police officer, sir, gotta tell you, you have no chance in hell. You really don't. Because if you ever wanted to understand, or if you ever thought you had a question about were your fellow police officers gonna be behind you and stand behind you in this really unfortunate accident, you just found out, no, they really aren't behind me, are they? Haven't heard from Sheriff David Clark's stupid ass either. Because, after all, him standing up with all that stupid ass shit on stage talking about police lives matter and blue lives matter, ain't heard a word out your mouth, have we? Didn't think so. So, the real question then comes in. What's going to happen to this officer? I would say his name, but again, y'all have this information out. I don't have it in front of me. This is just what's in my mind. Brother, I really, really wish you the best of luck on this. I really wish that someone would be there from the very same law enforcement agency to have your back, but it's just not going to happen. It really isn't. So, enough of that. Another moment of clarity I had, this one actually came, I want to say this was somewhere around June or July of the year 2005. Excuse me. I had just started a new job, just started driving tractor trailers over the road, and got to meet a few nice people, cool and whatnot. and would be driving all over the country. Now, there are some of you all that drive tractor trailers as well, and you all know what I'm talking about. But if you ever want to truly experience the degrees of bigotry, hatred, intolerance, out on out racism, homophobia, xenophobia, just get inside of a truck and haul product across this country. Because I'm here to tell you, you will learn that life lesson really quick, and it will become as clear as a bell to you that it doesn't matter the fact that we had this country's first African American democratically elected president. There is still going to be racism. There is still going to be prejudice. There is still going to be bigotry. And there are still going to be those hillbilly redneck motherfuckers that will want to test you at any truck stop, at any Walmart, especially at Walmarts in the South. I'm not slandering anybody. I'm not being libelous. I'm just telling you facts with my own eyes. And this is where I need to stop again and take a quick little diversion just to kind of put into context why I feel the way I feel now when it comes to racial equality and just being a genuinely good human being and wanting to give all people, no matter their skin color, no matter their ethnic background, no matter what country they come from, I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and I also try to give everybody the same basic human respect that I wish that I was able to get. But I know that in a lot of times that doesn't happen. So I touched on this in an earlier podcast about the fact that where I grew up, we grew up in virtually an all-black neighborhood surrounded by predominantly white neighborhoods. And we all went to a high school located in a school district that was, for the most part, predominantly white. If I remember it right, it was about 80% white, 15% African American, and the other percentage was everybody else mixed in. So, for lack of a better way to describe this, the black folks was going to have to get along with some of the white folks, and the white folks was going to have to get along with all of us black folks in some way, shape, form, or function. It didn't have to be pure hatred. It didn't have to be all total lovey-dovey, but as long as we gave each other that basic human respect, we could basically coexist. And so that's where I grew up. That's how I grew up. And I have a couple of white guys that will waste no time in hammering that point to me, asking me, why am I talking about racial issues? Why do I feel the way I feel? You know where you grew up. Yeah, I know where I grew up. And that's kind of the point, isn't it? Because we basically had to stick amongst ourselves. I can't really put it any plainer than that. But we also gave the white folks they space and gave them their little respect as long as it was returned in kind. And so that's how, at least in my life, I tried to move about in this world. Hey, listen, I can work with white folks or whoever. I could go to lunch with them, whatever. We do whatever we do, as long as, once again, that same basic respect that I give out to you, I expect it in return. I guess the saying that it could have all been summed up is that you get what you give. So if you give positive energy should return back to you. But seeing as though that, again, this is the good old United States of America, not always will good energy be returned to you. And so back in 2005, I got my first taste of like real hardcore racial hatred. Even though I've seen evidence of racial prejudice growing up, but it was my first time traveling into Florida. And now since then, I've been back to Florida so many times, I literally should have set up a P.O. box and got me an apartment down there. But my first taste of that was pulling up to a Waffle House in Jacksonville, Florida, parking my truck there, and going inside and sitting down with a couple of the other truck drivers that rode down, and we all commenced to getting ready to eat and order our food and stuff. And the waitress come by and take our orders. Everything's all lovey-dovey and everything's all good. And then I had one scraggly hillbilly walk up to me and said, "Do you realize this Waffle House don't serve niggers?" Oh, word? So that's how it's going to be. And so I just looked at dude and I'm like, man, fuck out of here. I ain't paying attention to you. And one of the guys that was with me, yeah, he was white. He stood up and he looked at the guy and he said, "Well, ask me that question." And so he did. He asked him, "You realize this Waffle House doesn't serve niggers?" And the white guy's name is Jimmy. And to this day, if I ever catch up with you, man, I know I deserve the sock in the jaw that you're going to give me, and I will eat that. And I won't cry, even though you'll knock a couple of my teeth out. But at any rate, Jimmy just looked at him and said, "No, we didn't know that this Waffle House didn't serve niggers. Because if we did, we would have threw your ass out of here already." And so that point right there really hit home for me. that was really my, okay, it doesn't matter where you go, you're gonna run into people like this. So you hear that coming from your mom and your dad and your aunts and stuff like that, but until it actually happens to you, until you actually see it and experience it and feel it with your own eyes and your own heart, and that really dark thud when it hits the bottom of your stomach, to where you're sitting there literally thinking, do I gotta fight this motherfucker? And if I fight this motherfucker, I might kill him. And if I kill him, I know I'm going to jail. You know, I got my fiance at the time with our son. He's sitting there. They're sitting up there in Cincinnati. I'm down here in Florida. If some shit really go down, what the fuck do I do? And so, long story short, the guy got ushered out by the Jacksonville Duval County Police. And to their credit, they, being the police, they actually went on ahead and Jazzy Jeff that dude clean out the door, and that was that. And I was able to enjoy my meal and yada yada blah. And that one moment, amongst a lot of other moments, that it stuck with me. And I always look at life now with the sense that I am a black man in this country. I am a strong man. I know what I can do. I know who I provide for. I know who I have to answer to. And I can tell you right now, none of these little white hillbillies, I don't have to answer to y'all. Okay? Because y'all gonna learn soon enough that this country and this government that you swear up and down that you live for and you'll die for, when you realize that the folks that are running this country consider you slightly better than us black folks, then you're going to want to get all up in the arms and shit. But I didn't want to get full-blown anger right this moment. I'm just stating some moments of clarity. Maybe when you hear these, you'll think to yourself, hey, I've had one of those. And it'll kind of give you a better sense, I should say, of who you are. Maybe it'll answer that question. Or maybe that'll answer that nagging thought in the back of your mind, like, really, why do I go through what I go through? Just think about it. Just think about it. But at any rate, that's all I got on my mind for this particular episode. Once again, I sincerely like to thank you all for supporting in me and supporting in my podcast. Please like, rate, and subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud. This podcast is brought to you with help from Spreaker.com. Shout out to Spreaker.com for hosting my podcast and hosting my rantings and ravings. And with that, I say peace.